So in 2014 at the NATO Wales Summit, the JEF letter of intent was signed, which established it with firstly 7 members, and it's now grown till 10 over its first decade. Effectively, European operations predominantly within Afghanistan under a NATO banner, and also in Libya exposed some deficiencies, and also with dwindling defence budgets around the time of the financial crash, the answer started to look like the Joint Expeditionary Force. So the UK took the lead on that as part of a NATO framework nations, and that's what developed it into what it is today.
So JEF was fundamentally born of NATO, and let no one say anything else, and is highly regarded today by NATO because of that. All of the nations, so the 3 Baltic states, Estonia, who'd worked with us in Afghanistan, and then Latvia, Lithuania, who ironically with Brexit had been our partners in the European Union battle group. So that was how we got them engaged as well. All wanted to join. They all could see potentially the Russia threat as well, and this was another stepping stone. We had interest and were talking behind the scenes anyway with Finland and Sweden because it was naturally part of their discussions about potentially joining NATO in the future, but they didn't at that particular stage. And then we had the Netherlands for the reasons I've sort of spoken about, but also from the Netherlands perspective, they introduced another idea as part of JEF, which was about saving capabilities that were already in existence, because at the time we were losing capabilities left, right and centre, which I'll cover in a second. Then of course we had well established links with Norway too and Denmark. So as a result of that, and that sort of intangible really, we started to pursue it a bit more through NATO's framework nation concept at the Wales Summit. And the trick of this, and this was the important bit about how we did it, was we realised we didn't need to sign a treaty, because these were nations who naturally came together, who trusted each other, and you don't really need a treaty if you have all of that like-mindedness and the ability, therefore, to operate together, and more importantly, the desire and the political will to put this together without the necessity of a treaty. That was special. And that's why I think to this day it's worked. That is also why it's been joined by Finland and Sweden for exactly the same reasons. And who knows what will happen in the future in terms of expansion for other reasons too. But that is in essence how the JEF was created.
So JEF responded very quickly, and it was pretty much down to the fact that it already existed. It was always already a framework, predominantly a defence framework then, that could be used for such occurrences. It was very much on the then Prime Minister, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who said, well, we want to develop this into some more political dimension. So the day after the invasion, there was the first leaders' call, which President Zelensky dialed into, and then within a month, there had been a physical leaders meeting, and that is now an established part of JEF governance. The next leaders meeting, the first one under the new UK government, will be on the 16th of December in Tallinn, Estonia, also the location of UK NATO forces on Operation Kubrit.
The JEF benefits European security because it's based on geopolitical realism. It naturally attracted the interests of our partner nations locally because they were looking at their own security in the same way that the British should be, which starts at home. It's about fundamentally having resilient populations. In the case of the UK especially, that means keeping your knee on the neck of nationalism, frankly, to avoid your own nation dividing. You then have that side of the security, which again we've seen over the years in Northern Ireland that we were involved in for years and so on. So there is the home-based piece of security. There is then the region. And that region is European. We can't take away the fact that part of the Atlantic, whether it's the North Atlantic and across, is occupied by European nations, whether it's Icelandic, whether it's Greenland up in the high north, whether it's Svalbard up in the high north, and so on. So we have a European piece of geography that the United Kingdom and Europeans share with shared interests. So the JEF finds itself in a brilliant position of having High North and Arctic Council members, all of which work very closely together, all of which are interested in getting these trade routes in. As I say, I use the example Rotterdam to Japan, sort of rhymes, and back and forth. So it seems that with the Americans also looking for further burden sharing, it's logical to assume that the JEF and UK and Europe will work together on security of the High North.
Well, flexibility is a comparative advantage of JEF over other comparable defence and security frameworks, and it was really in from its inception, so it runs what is called as 1+1 mechanism. So if two members agree, one of them being the UK as the lead framework nation, the JEF can undertake a series of activities and missions. They don't require unanimity. In NATO, you require the unanimity of 32, where in the EU, it's a unanimity of 27. In the JEF, it's 10. So within the JEF, if there is broad consensus of direction of travel, or even a subset of the JEF, it can still act. And the JEF describes that as a significant advantage, and it is within European security, because traditionally that has been a very sticky point within a variety of frameworks and initiatives. And that's not just for deploying troops, that's not just for capability development, it's also for innovation. So really very quickly drawing up minimum viable products of things amongst 10 very tech savvy and rich European nations. You can do it much quicker than you can do at NATO. The JEF has no legacy processes. And once that's established, if the product that you have then developed is good, then you can easily scale it to NATO at 32 members.
Because the beauty of the JEF is it is 10 to potentially 12 nations, which means you can actually work together more quickly, conveniently. You can do things that perhaps you can't do in NATO at 32. There are too many diverse parts of NATO that make it difficult sometimes to gain consensus. Putin has done us a wonderful job because he's identified the thing that unifies NATO, and all 32 nations are working brilliantly together right now in Brussels in order to share intelligence and to work for Ukraine and for the NATO allies with against Russia's aggression. But 12 works. 10 to 12 maximum seems to work. So the success, I think, of the JEF is still yet to be fully seen, but it's set all of those conditions for cooperation from everything from capability developments, particularly in emerging disrupting technologies, to great innovation. And do you know what's best about it more than anything else? Is it is a complete blank canvas. All of the nations that work together on the JEF can do whatever we want to, and there are no rules. And I don't mean that in terms of rules of war, of course there are, but I mean that in terms of experimentation. And that, I think, in its own right, it makes the JEF different. We could change with 10 nations, without a shadow of a doubt, the way that we handle our clumsy technological, digital, in particular, ways of acquisition by saying, well, let's build a bank. Let's have innovation funding that we all pay into and start funding our companies. Let's get our own companies to cooperate more. Let's develop capabilities together with 10 nations now in NATO that could do the other thing we all wanted to do from the very start when David Richards' initial inception about CFI and Connected Forces Initiative, which was about interoperability between nations that was already been established. You could have 10 of NATO nations, that's nearly a third of the nations, all with the same equipment, all with the same kit, developed it together with rapid acquisition methodologies, funded by their own bank if we wanted to do that, and we could do it. And we could do it because these are like-minded, trusting nations who are prepared to work together. It's intangible, it's strange, but it works.
Late last year in 2023, the JEF signed a 10-year vision which significantly increased its ambition. And the main aspect of the JEF, especially in the research that we have done to date, is the fact that the first decade of JEF is going to be very, very different to the second decade of JEF, with the European security environment rapidly deteriorating, question marks about the US commitment under a second Trump presidency to European security, it will fall to the UK and also the Joint Expeditionary Force members to step up. And that's really where they are in now, and this is why the leaders meeting at this time is so crucial, that the JEF really needs to enhance its capabilities, its decision making, its governance, and also use its strengths and its advantages, particularly in terms of innovation, to really speed up the cycle of innovation that we have at the moment.
We have to start to think about how have we managed to deliver any of these big initiatives and different ideas. And some of them we've done very well. The cooperation on undersea infrastructure, again, very much a military task, but with plug-ins from civilian other government departments. That sort of idea is going well. But what about some of the other ideas? One thing that I would say in air of caution is the British are brilliant. We are brilliant at having creative ideas. Our whole education system is based towards that. But we can push ourselves a bit too far when it comes to trying to deliver everything. But the problem fundamentally is there are too many initiatives, not enough capacity in the UK Ministry of Defence to deliver it. So do we just continue to talk about it, or should we not realise that framework nations are there perhaps to provide the commander's guidance? Commander's the wrong word for the JEF, but to provide that guidance as to what it is we could do and what it is maybe we should do. But should we not then open it up to other nations to volunteer to lead some of these initiatives? So if the British want to do a bank, that seems to fit in. That would be great for innovation funding and various other fast capability moves. If the Swedish, for example, would like to host a bigger deep tech conference than they currently do and start trading ideas on quantum technologies and biosynthetic data storage that they're doing a lot of and so on and so forth, we could suddenly see some of the finest technology companies in Europe, certainly in if not the world, that are part of the JEF nations already cooperating even more together for this sort of thing. So perhaps we should offer that up. Should the British offer up or ask someone to volunteer for space cooperation? Is that a natural thing for the Norwegians or again the Swedish? There's so much we could do. The Dutch, again, could turn around another idea, looking at multi-domain operations. They now have the Command and Control Centre of Excellence that they've given to just outside The Hague to NATO. So all of these nations could stand up and run these initiatives if we admitted that our capacity was perhaps a little bit full. We'll take on some of these, but could we ask for volunteers? And I guarantee, given the general feeling across the JEF to want to make this work, that they'll be happy to take up and lead initiatives as partner nations. That can only benefit all of us.